Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We are going to talk about the longevity mindset, why behavior, not biohacking, will define the future of health. Longevity is the topic I cover almost every day at Business Insider. People are interested in real ways about how they can live and max out their health, their longevity. But as we've talked about, longevity can also be a buzzword, maybe a little bit meaningless, overblown. People have talked about that in other sessions here. And so what we're going to talk about is how to prioritize longevity in a real way. We kind of know a lot of the basics about movement, sleep, nutrition, time with other people, but how do we do it in a real way in our own lives every day, right? How do we bring it home? So fortunately, we have 3 really fantastic experts here to talk about this. Starting all the way over there on the left, we have Dr. David Katz, who's the founder of Diet ID, a digital diet assessment tool. He's a lifestyle medicine and nutrition expert. He's also the founder of the Yale Preventative Research Center, and he's written several books, including How to Eat, which is something to know.
Helpful. And
my personal favorite title, The Truth About Food, Why Pandas Eat Bamboo and People Get Bamboozled.
Ooh, good one.
And then we have Professor Sarah Pressman from the University of California, Irvine. She told me she teaches 400 students how to be happy every year. She investigates how the mind-body connection impacts health. She's discovered interesting ways that happiness can boost longevity, and she also has a TEDx talk, Why Doctors Should Care About Happiness. And then we have Dr. Jeffrey Egler, the CMO of Noom, Chief Medical Officer. He started his career in family medicine, and then is it fair to say you became somewhat disillusioned with that?
That's fair.
Okay. And then you transitioned into lifestyle medicine. And you told me you want to help people live better using lifestyle interventions.
That's all true.
Okay, great. So I want to kick it off with a question for all of you. We're here to talk about the longevity mindset. What's one way that you have each, on a day-to-day basis, re-engineered your daily routine or your habits to boost your longevity mindset?
Go ahead.
Sarah.
You want me to go first? Okay, so as a happiness professor, it probably won't surprise you that happiness is my health behavior to increase longevity. I went into my field because I was very interested in how stress was killing us, and I'm happy to talk about that. But happiness turns out to be the antidote to stress. Our brains are very programmed to be anxious, to just anything bad that happens is so sticky, and so we have to intentionally practice doing positive things every single day to really undo that high physiological arousal that we have. And it could be something as simple as just realizing how beautiful Aspen is, just spending a few moments to savor that. It could be taking a beautiful awe walk, going out into the trees and just appreciating how amazing they are. There's so many simple ways to do that, and I feel like we need to practice it the same way that we practice exercise.
Great. Jeffrey?
Sure, yeah. I'll go next. So 2 things real quick. So the first thing is, when I think about what I've been doing recently to hack a better longevity plan, is eat the frog. Has anyone heard that term before? Do you know what that means? So it doesn't really sound like something you want to do, right? Eat the frog. So I don't know where I picked that up, but I think about it all the time. And so eating the frog means do the thing you don't want to do. And so eat the frog first. So I really like, weightlifting is my thing. That's the exercise I do most. It's the thing that I enjoy, kind of just lets me take some time. I actually even do some reading while I'm doing it. I have a nice setup in my backyard, but I like to do it in the evening. But the reality is, if I let it go to the evening, I got to put the kids to bed. I get tied up getting in bed with them. There's a bunch of risks for leaving it to the end of the day. So absolutely. I have found that I got to eat the frog and I got to do the exercise early, even if it's not necessarily my preference. And the second thing I'll start off with is, in the verbal footsteps of Dr. Pressman here, joy and happiness. Make what you're doing, especially the things that seem hard. I think the secret is to try to make them fun. you alluded to my sort of disillusionment. I spent the first 10 years of my career discontent, unhappy, unfulfilled. Joy and happiness were not on my radar. So now 10 years later, through psychology and applying psychology to my own life, the fact that I can say that my work, my life is happy, I have joy, that's my longevity plan, and I would encourage you all to just take the things that are challenging for you and try to make them fun somehow.
Love that.
And Hillary, I'll flip that around a bit in just a second. I'm afraid I have to start with a public service announcement. We are breathing smoky air at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and that's because the Rocky Mountains are on fire in June, which is as florid an indication as any we could imagine that we have broken the planet. And so to contextualize this discussion we're about to have about longevity, the pursuit of years in life and life in years, let's just start with this. We have some hope of being healthy, vital people on a healthy, vital planet, or we have no hope of being healthy, vital people. Let's embrace the mission. To your question, I went many, many years working 7 days a week and very long hours. There was one time in my career I had 3 simultaneous book deadlines, and when I turned in the third, which was a textbook, I felt like I had gotten out of jail. I really had barely seen daylight for 3 years, and I remember celebrating that day. At some point after that, I decided not to eat the frog, but actually to eat the croissant. I don't do very often, but what I mean is to embrace recreation. We joke, those of us in lifestyle medicine, health promotion, preventive medicine, that routinely we're killing ourselves in the service of promoting health. Countless frequent flyer miles, traveling the world, always giving talks, doing studies, submitting grants, all that. I actually internalized the advice and embraced recreation. I made a big commitment. I bought a horse. I'm an equestrian. So the horse became a relationship. So it actually ticked that box. It's a connection. Then I got another horse. So I ride all the time. And I found that doing some of the things I had been telling patients and audiences to do for all these years was something that took a real commitment on my part because I was just too busy talking about it to find the time to do it. I committed to doing it for myself. So that would be my tip to all of you. Be your own priority. Not your only priority, but be your own priority.
What were those actual pieces of advice that you were giving patients that you weren't instructing or putting into place for you?
Exactly that. Find time for recreation. Find the things you love to do. Make time for what makes you happy. All those things, and just countless. And then I'd go home and I'd have to spend hours in the evening working on a book, or a grant, or a research paper, and then it would be the next day, and repeat. And so I wasn't doing it for many years. And when you're young and ambitious and trying to climb the ladder, makes sense. But at some point, you take stock of that and say, maybe I should listen to some of what I'm advising other people to do.
Practice what you preach. I also wanted to talk because, with longevity, there's so much tracking and measuring. And so in this conversation, we want to get into, how can you bring about real change, longevity change in your own life? And David, you were talking about the old management advice, right? What gets measured gets managed. And actually, I heard someone else at this conference earlier say, money follows what we measure. So it's all the same idea of you need data, you need to have capability to measure something to move the needle, perhaps. So I was trying to think, what kinds of things do we measure when it comes to longevity? We measure step counts, how much sleep we get, maybe biological age. I wanted to mention quickly, I don't know if anyone in the audience tried the Noom mirror to measure your biological age. Yeah. And did it go? Yeah, nice. Okay.
Oh, no.
Mixed review. Mixed. Some up, some down.
We also have a face scan in the app that basically mimics that for you if you haven't tried it yet.
But so the reason I bring it up is it's cool to have data, right? It's cool to say I'm, whatever age, but my Noom mirror age is 10 years younger, It's okay, cool. But what do we do with all this data? Sarah, I wanted to bring you in here because you've mentioned some research around how too much tracking can actually be harmful.
Absolutely. So this is a very new area because obviously biohacking and tracking is all new, but we now have a new name for it, which is tracker-induced health anxiety. And I've experienced this myself. My watch will tell me that I have very low heart rate variability. I'm a stress researcher, so being told that is not great. But then what happens when I'm told that my heart rate variability is bad? I get stressed about it. And then I get upset about it. And then my heart rate variability drops even lower, right? And so this is happening across many domains. There's something called orthosomnia now, which is basically people who get so obsessed with their sleep trackers that they can't sleep well because they're in bed so long just trying to have the best possible sleep. But the sleep arousal of wanting to have the best possible sleep is keeping them up at night. And so we have to stop letting our devices be our judge, right? It has to be a window into our behavior, but not allow it to, you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, you slept terribly, you should feel really bad about yourself. That's not the right way for us to go. And it really is causing more stress than benefit for some people.
And Jeffrey, I wanted to bring you in here because obviously this is something you think about a lot at Noom. So what is the answer to that? How do you, track and measure change without doing harm, or how do you do it for good?
So I think that it's important for all of us that are tracking these kind of metrics to just think in terms of, rather than focusing on the minutia of the number, whether it's a hemoglobin A1C or your blood pressure, those things are important to watch. But what's most important is trends and trajectories. Really understanding what the numbers are indicating, sort of what's the underlying root issue behind a hemoglobin A1C, right? And follow those things without focusing and getting overly concerned about the actual individual metrics. Otherwise, you run the risk of sort of losing the forest through the trees. But in this discussion of metrics, if you don't mind, two things that I'd like to bring up. One is, from a Noom perspective, and the other is, again, as a personal clinician, the two metrics that I think are the most important are not what you would think. They are, number one, engagement. Our chief product officer is here in the audience, Aaron Sievers, and his whole team focuses on engagement. And as a clinician, what I've now realized is that should be a vital sign for us. How engaged a person is, we should be able to measure that and follow it over time, because you can have the best doctor giving you the best plan, but if you're not engaged in that plan, if it doesn't fit for you, it's not the best plan at all, right? The best plan is the plan that you do. So engagement is something that we watch, and our data shows that our program is really designed to pull you in. It's designed to keep you wanting to come back because we make it enjoyable. We gamify things. We make it fun. And so then people keep coming back. And so our data shows that the top 25% of users have more weight loss. They have longer sustainability on the medications. And they stay on the medications 2.2 times longer than they would otherwise. And the other thing from a personal clinician point of view is, back to Sarah and her work, another vital sign as a doctor should be happiness. I should really be assessing that person and how they're feeling, the amount of joy, the amount of vitality that they have in their lives. Because without that, what is the best medical plan? Like, what are they living for? And even if they're sort of being compliant with a plan, but they're really unhappy, it's sort of a dead end. So those are the things that I think about in terms of meaningful metrics.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to figuring out how to, do metrics in the right way is something that you mentioned, David, which is sometimes you can get caught in this flywheel of collecting more data and more data and more data and not actually moving into the change, right?
There are a couple of considerations here. One argument against all the tracking is it's reductionistic. You're looking at tiny parts of tiny parts, focusing on measures related to biochemical pathways. There is the constant risk of missing the forest for the trees. So you're focusing on miscellaneous biohacks, but you're not eating well, you're not getting a healthy amount of physical activity, you're potentially exposed to toxins, your social connections are not rewarding and enriching, you're not happy, you're not thriving. That's the forest. So it would make no sense to divert one's attention to the reductionistic elements of wellness and miss the big picture of wellness. But I think the other considerations are that in general, measurement should be context-specific, relevant, interpretable, and actionable. So for example, we can do genetic screening and start to predict risk, but we don't know what to do about that. Unless it's directly modifiable, and by the way, this pertains to clinicians as well. I've been, among other things, a residency director and taught medical students at Yale, and doctors routinely order tests to get data they're going to do absolutely nothing with. It's just, let's get the test because it's a test that will tell us something about you. But is there a decision note there? You should ask yourself the same thing. So there's a field of science called clinical epidemiology, which is the statistical underpinnings of robust clinical decision-making. That's pertinent to your doctors. But the same really pertains to you. What am I going to do with this information? What you want should be upstream. So for example, the 6 domains of lifestyle medicine, which I enumerate as feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. Feet, physical activity. Forks, your dietary pattern. Fingers, do not bring toxins to your face. Sleep, you need enough. Stress, you want to avoid having too much. And love. We are social creatures. No one is an island. We thrive when we are connected to others. All love is good love. We're talking about friendship here, not just romantic love. That's the 6-cylinder engine right there of lifestyle as medicine. Measures that tell you if you are engaging well in those domains are actionable because you could do something about each of them. You should know your diet quality, and if you don't, that's an important measure. You should know, either by inference or measurement, your physical activity and how it compares to recommendations. If you don't, it's actionable. It is useful to know something about your sleep quality, but frankly, if you're sleeping fine, I wouldn't disrupt it to measure your sleep. I don't measure my sleep. I just respect sleep and try to have good sleep hygiene. Similarly with stress. If you're stressed out and trying to intervene, measuring it so you can track your progress might make sense. Otherwise, measuring it just might stress you out, so on. So think about things that are upstream of what you want to change, interpretable by you, actionable, and not overly reductionistic. That's a general playbook for making good decisions about what should be measured. And Jeff, just to react to one of the things you said, if you have type 2 diabetes, you may very well want to monitor your glycohemoglobin because it's a critical indicator of the control of that condition. If you don't have type 2 diabetes, then you're upstream of that. Measuring glycohemoglobin is not apt to be terribly helpful. Measuring the behaviors that will determine if your glycohemoglobin is going to rise is upstream, interpretable, and actionable. I'd park there.
Yeah, maybe better to measure cookies than your hemoglobin A1C.
Exactly. And you know, if you have coronary disease, obviously tracking your lipids very closely. They may be treated with pharmacotherapy, very important. For everybody else to be fixated on their lipids wouldn't make nearly as much sense as to focus on diet and physical activity, which will tend to take care of your weight and your metabolism and consequently your lipids. So, right, think about your personal context, what's upstream, interpretable, and actionable for you.
Well, that just reminds me of, so one of the things that we've started doing is sending people, you can get an at-home diagnostics kit. And that speaks back to engagement. Are people going and getting labs done at their doctor's office? And so you can now get labs done at your own home. It's very convenient. But the point of bringing that up is not, again, to fixate on these labs, but really the health insights report that generates and the insights and the tips that can help you to then take the action that's way more important than the actual numbers of the metrics themselves.
Mm-hmm. And is the idea that you would then test again and like chart your progress over time, or not necessarily? It's just
yeah, absolutely. So what we do, and what I think is a good model, is you can get the test as an individual test and then choose to get it again later with no membership or commitments. And so you get the information, you can then put the plan into action, and then should you want to choose to test to see if that's a good idea, which I do recommend, then you can do that. But in other programs, we have membership models where you actually get testing quarterly so that you can just, again, not to fixate on the numbers, but is what I'm doing moving me in the right direction? Am I trending in the right direction? And if not, one of the things that we may talk more about later is don't continue to do the same things. Don't try harder. If the plan's not working, you need a different plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also thinking about these 6 pillars, sometimes the plan can actually help, like if you're focused on one, it actually moves all of them.
Yes, critical issue. So I'm a past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I have fussed with them for a long time that we shouldn't talk about pillars. Because if one pillar is cracked and you go to repair that pillar, it does nothing for the other 5, right? These domains are not like that. So a quick anecdote about me. I was at a conference once with Deepak Chopra, who told me personally I should meditate. When I told him I didn't have time, he said, then you need to meditate twice as often, right? the usual response. And I've really tried to meditate. I really have over the years. And all I've ever accomplished is, how many emails could I be answering now? I mean, that's as far as I ever got. But I mentioned my horses. Outside hiking, meditative. Riding my horses, meditative. A good workout clears my mind. Well, that's not one pillar, that's 2 domains. I'm being physically active, getting my exercise, and getting my stress relief at the same time. And that combination absolutely helps me sleep better. So now I've got 3 out of 6, which makes me feel better, which makes me nicer. So that improves my social connections. Now I've got, you see how this works? It's a cascade in either direction. Any one of these broken tends to break the others. If you're not sleeping well, you're cranky, you're not going to exercise, then you don't have a good feeling about yourself. It impairs social connections. You're going to eat junk food for comfort, and down and down you go around the drain. But it's a spiral staircase. You climb one step at a time. Each of these things you embrace gives you the wherewithal to embrace the next. So absolutely, they're not silos, they're not pillars, they're highly interactive domains, and each one you embrace as a challenge empowers you to embrace the next.
I just want to reemphasize that. And I think the issue of meditation is worth doubling down on, because I've
It's
sat
important, but there are different ways to do it.
That's exactly what the point I was going to bring up. And I think that you're, working with your horses is the perfect example. So for me, I very rarely, I have learned to calm myself down for a moment. That's an important skill.
You've been calm the whole time I've been with you. So thank you for that.
But my meditation is actually martial arts, which doesn't look like meditation at all, but it's a moving meditation. And I assure you, when I'm at the dojo and I'm working certain moves or techniques, I'm not thinking about my stressors, I'm not thinking about work, I'm not thinking about anything, because I'm in the present. And that's the whole point of meditation. And so a moving meditation, or a different way of doing it, to your point, can combine those things. Exercise for me is a meditation as well.
Yeah.
I also want to get back to something you mentioned, this idea of vital signs. Like, what are we tracking for longevity? And I guess, Sarah, I want to bring you in here, because you had mentioned something about what we're not tracking. Should doctors be tracking happiness, and how would that work?
Yeah, I think philosophers have messed us up a little bit in making us think that it's so hard to chase happiness. It's like a butterfly, and if you chase it, it just flies away. No. And if measuring is the same thing. Measurement, it's very easy. It's actually very common now when you go to the doctor that they'll have you fill out a form about depression. They'll have you fill out a form about, different symptoms, relating to stress even. But they're not asking you about if you have life purpose. They're not asking you about whether or not you have something that excites you in your day-to-day. And what we know is that when we're thinking about longevity, being more positive is related to about 5 to 6 extra years of life. And for those of you who are at the talk on Monday night about living past 75, if you disagree with Zeke and you actually want to live past 75, optimists are about 70% more likely to make it to 85 and up. And so this matters, and there are very simple scales that we can have people do, many of them just 5, 10 items, to ask about these different life meaning, life purpose, optimism, happiness kinds of questions. And this is going to be telling, and it's really important because I think we're always, in medicine and psychology, very focused on what's wrong with you, and that must be what's predicting your health. But when we look at it, and we look at longevity, oftentimes it's the present of the positive and not the absence of the negative that's really driving how long we live. If we have life purpose, we want to live longer. We want to go horseback riding. We want to do martial arts. If we don't like our lives, we're not motivated to even take our medicine. And one of the things we've seen in positive psychology is that the interventions that we have people do, like gratitude journaling, meditating on positive things, these things are really good at helping us want to take better care of ourselves. It's one of the best things that it can do.
And so in our own like day-to-day, I mean, you mentioned journaling, meditation, these kinds of things, but like, I think it can feel a little bit daunting sometimes to think like, how do I know if I'm happy enough, or how do I get happier? Like,
Yeah.
what do you recommend as like practical advice?
Yeah, so, and I mean, there's a really interesting area of research, some of it done in Colorado actually, on how obsessively pursuing happiness is exactly the same problem as we were talking about with obsessively biohacking. So people who are like, happiness is the most important thing, get more depressed, get very upset. It's not a good way of living, right? So when, like anything, you know, we've got a U-shaped curve approach. And so, you know, any app that is telling you to like every minute, every hour, track your happiness, I don't think that's good for you because it's not letting you be in flow. It's not letting you experience the joy of your social interactions, right? It's not letting you be present. And so instead, really thinking about what is my ideal affective state? And we're all different, right? We all want different things. Some of us want to be more excited. Some of us just want calm in our lives. And so then trying to every day, like exercise, practice different things. You know, have coffee with a friend, take a walk in nature, you know, try these different approaches. Meditation, maybe it doesn't work for you, and see how that affects the emotions that you are trying to feel. And it's actually not that hard. We can move our life purpose. I could move your life purpose in 5 minutes. It's actually not that hard. You just have to intentionally work on it, just like you would any other health behavior. And we're just not focused on that right now.
I would say get help. Because, you know, when Sarah says that being happy or having joy or lower stress levels can have, being more positive can lead to 7 more years of longevity. For anybody that was like me 10 years ago, maybe for some of the people in the audience right now that are dealing with depression or anxiety, just too much stress, that sounds like, oh, great, I'd just be more positive. How do I do that, right? If I could do that, I would. I actually had to go to a 2-year master's degree program in psychology to learn to start unraveling my thinking patterns. So I would strongly suggest that, you know, your mind that got you into where you are is very unlikely to get you out of it. And so typically we need an educator, we need a coach, we need a support system, we need somebody to help share different perspectives. And whether that can be a friend, a trusted family member, a physician, or maybe a program like that's what we do. I mean, our program actually helps people with their perspective and gaining different insights that might help them think differently, but persistence and consistency of being sort of triggered to become into awareness of how you're thinking and what you might be able to choose or think differently is life-changing over time.
So we've got happiness as a vital sign for longevity. But Jeffrey, you had also talked about engagement. You want that to be a vital sign for longevity. Like, explain that a little. Like how do we know? Like, how do we know it's happening? How do we boost it?
Right. So engagement on a personal level is how many of us have had a goal and we set out on that goal, but basically we don't get there, right? And so if we're not reaching our short-term goals, then there's an engagement problem, that something is going wrong. And it might not be that it's it might not be that it's the wrong goal, but maybe the wrong path for trying to get there. Or maybe it's the wrong goal, and we should rethink about ultimately getting to where we want to be by taking a different path and setting a different goal. So engagement to me on a personal level is just making sure that you're consistently doing the things, it's sort of integrity with yourself or with your word. It's just sort of consistently being able to see that you are following your own advice.
Okay. So how do you think about that in our current health system? Like, how do you bridge the gap between like this kind of like engagement and how it works, like
Great.
how
So
healthcare
glad you
works?
asked. So our current health system doesn't do that, I don't think. So I just recently visited a very prestigious Ivy League school that will remain nameless, a very prestigious healthcare center. And I went to their endocrinology department to engage with them on how they deal with weight loss and obesity. And basically, my question was, okay, so you see the patient, you put them on a program. What happens in the 3 months between now and when you'll see them again? And basically, they said, well, nothing really. And what's the result of that? Well, they come back, and a third of them aren't even taking the medication. A third of them didn't start the medication. Many of them quit because they had side effects. That's our healthcare system at its average, certainly not at its best, but even our best isn't that great. So we need something that helps to fill the gap. And so we're actually working with healthcare systems, and we're trying to work more with providers so that we can be that program in between the visits so that people continue to be engaged. So imagine you go to see your doctor, you get a plan, and then you have something in your pocket that you can engage with every day that is going to keep you in the program between doctor's visits. That's the only, I think that digital health is for that reason alone, that we carry it with us all the time, that we have access to it all the time. And I'm not talking about checking it in a negative, obsessive fashion, but sort of utilizing it as a companion that helps us stay on target and continuing to follow our North Stars.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about medicine, longevity, you had also mentioned that you feel like GLP-1s are changing the conversation about metabolic health.
Yeah, I think that what's important to know about GLP-1 medications is, first of all, they're extremely effective. We know that. The unfortunate thing is it's not sustainable. So 11 out of 12 people will discontinue the medication within 3 years, and 3 out of 4 people will stop taking it within 1 year. Most often, the gains that you get are lost within 18 months. So it's a wonderful catalyst, though. So why we're seeing such a phenomenon is that people that have been dealing with being overweight or obese their entire lives have never had a real taste of success. And a medication like a GLP-1 gives them that. So they start to see, oh wow, suddenly the food noise is gone. Oh wow, so suddenly I have more capacity for doing other things. And success begets success. They start to, what I see all the time is that people that are on these medications are actually the people that are changing their lifestyle because it's a virtuous cycle of, oh, I am eating better, I feel better, that's leading me to exercise more, that's making me feel even better, so I'm taking on new things, and you get this virtuous cycle that continues to move through.
With all the pillars happening.
Right. So I think that this medication and others that will come should not be seen as the end all. And I think that anybody in medicine that has been really reflective about that has always known it's not going to be about medicine. But we can see that that they can be used as catalysts, but unfortunately, that's not really how they're being used in practice today. That behavior pattern is not being linked to it, which I think is what we really need to do to have success in phase 2 of GLPs and other medications moving forward.
And David, I want to bring you back in here because you have a long history of thinking about medicine as part of behavior change. And so talk about how you think about that when it's the right tool and when it's not.
There's so many different ways to approach this. One of the things I want to pivot to, Hillary, is evidence and a little bit about the biohacking we are speaking against, right? The title here suggests not biohacking, but this. We should probably make that case. And I just want to quickly say that the conversation thus far has been about all the right things, but that doesn't mean we are not familiar with the NAD pathway, NR and NMN, and with mTOR, molecular target of rapamycin and DNA methylation, and all the different biochemical pathways we could be looking at, and some of the very interesting recent advances, like the discovery of this 15-carbon fatty acid in dolphins that's apparently associated with longevity. I'm not sure exactly what we're supposed to do with that. Fraternize with dolphins, potentially. We'll see.
Hey, relationships are good for you.
Absolutely. Well, and they're really cool creatures, let's face it. And then, perhaps most provocatively, the regeneration genes, the discovery that for an older body to produce what are essentially eternally young gametes, egg and sperm, you have to re-youthify them. And there are actually genes responsible for re-youthifying our cells. That's a stunning advance. The conversation we're having isn't about those things, but not for want of knowing about them, but rather because if you look at what we know is actually associated with a bounty of years in life and a bounty of life in years, which is what we all want, right? Not one without the other. Living long and not prospering with vitality seems relatively unappealing. Live long, prosper with vitality, that's the prize. But we see that in the blue zones, right? Dan Buettner, I know, is here. I ran into him on his bike yesterday.
Right
there you are. Hey, Dan. So, basically we have 5 populations around the world where people routinely live to be 100, don't succumb to chronic disease. That's what we want. Live long, prosper with vitality. And it hasn't been courtesy of GLP-1s, and it hasn't been courtesy of biohacking, and it hasn't been courtesy of monitoring everything and measuring everything in reductionism. It has been by virtue of the big six. And Dan's got 9. Sorry, Dan, I tend to do 6 from the lifestyle medicine field. But whether it's Dan's Power 9 or the 6, it's the same basic things, right? Healthy, plant-predominant diet, routine physical activity, avoiding toxins, enough sleep, mitigating stress, strong social connections, feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love every time. No drug is a panacea. I agree entirely with Jeff. GLP-1s are remarkable pharmacotherapy. They really are a surprising advance to me. I never thought we would manage to do quite as well as we've done with this drug class. You should all know, by the way, that this peptide is something we produce in our bodies. So the specific incretins that are being marketed are related to our own internal glucagon-like peptide, but we produce it. And the lifestyle behaviors we're discussing enhance your endogenous production. So you're not just adopting skills and behaviors. You're not just internalizing skill power to say this drug I don't want to be on for the rest of my life will be a catalyst to healthier behavior. But adopting those behaviors is actually boosting your endogenously produced levels of GLP-1s so you're less dependent on the exogenous source. And Hillary, I have absolutely no recollection what your original question was.
This was great, but the question was and also, how do you know when the time is right to add a drug like a GLP-1 and when is it not so right and you can just do these other things?
I think if you have sought out help and tried a range of other things and are not satisfied with the results, and are looking for success. And I agree completely with Jeff. A lot of people struggling with weight management have been struggling forever. And by the way, just in case someone hasn't already made this clear to you, it is not your fault. It used to be throughout most of human history that calories were relatively scarce and hard to get, and physical activity was unavoidable. It was called survival, and everybody just did it every day. It did not require specialized footwear or a gym membership. We have devised a modern world where physical activity is scarce and hard to get, and not only are calories unavoidable, but most of them come at us in ultra-processed foods that are willfully engineered to be addictive. If you haven't read Michael Moss, I commend his writing to you. 2 great books, Salt, Sugar, Fat, and Hooked. A New York Times Magazine cover story, The Extraordinary Science of Addictive Junk Food. That's the title. So if you just Google Moss addictive, you can read about how large food companies pay teams of scientists bonuses using functional MRI machines to design foods it's impossible to stop eating. So it should come as no surprise that you may need a little help to quiet the food noise. GLP-1s can play that role. But think of them from the start as a catalyst, a springboard. I'm going to use this. It's going to launch me towards success because success begets success. But I am then going to invest in myself and acquire skills so that I can go the distance. Mm-hmm. And going the distance means living on that skill power rather than costly pharmacotherapy at the expense of side effects, right? But a very useful springboard into that change.
I mean, I think you said that really well, but just to bookend that, even if we did have, there are other medications that are coming. There's next generation GLP-1s, GIPs, yep. Triple agonists. There's medications that are coming that are going to be even more amazing, I think. But even if we had a magic bullet like that, at best, it would be undoing the damage that we're doing on a regular basis through our environments, through our choices. And so, again, it sort of comes back to the point of a longevity mindset is so much more important. The way that I think of it is otherwise, this magic medication may be a great bucket that helps us bail water out of the sinking boat. But if we don't patch the holes, which are our food industry, big food, for example, a lot of these things, then the boat is still going to be, we're going to be at best just maintaining where we are.
I've got one more point, if I may. Sorry. Family, lifestyle, healthy living, you can share it. You can pay it forward as a grown-up with your spouse, as 2 grown-ups with your children, or 1 grown-up with your children, as children with your parents, as children with your grandparents. You can share it. You can't pass around the GLP-1. The skill set for healthy living is something that you can give to others. And not only can you give it to others, but you get better at it when you do, because remember the adage, it is true, in unity there is strength. We live it together, we die it alone. It makes no sense. We should think about healthy living as something we want to share with the people we love because we love them, because we want them to have the prize too. Thank you. So GLP-1s can't, there isn't a family prescription plan yet. I hope we don't wind up with one. That could be the next thing too. But what we're talking about, you absolutely want to share it. You'll do it better when you do, and you'll be helping other people achieve the prize as well, which will, I think, contribute to your happiness and optimism.
Yeah, and I mean, one vital sign we haven't talked about is social relationships, which I think we've heard echoed in multiple talks. But if you haven't heard it yet, if you're ignoring social relationships for your longevity diet, you are doing it wrong. It is as powerful. For being isolated is as bad for you as being a 15 cigarette a day smoker. It is as harmful for you as being isolated as being a regular drinker, like a very, very heavy drinker. And we don't measure it when we go to the doctors. But relationships are critical, not just for longevity, for everything. If I walked up to you and gave you a punch biopsy and then had you fight with your partner about something you guys always fight about, you heal a day slower. Even in young, healthy 20-year-olds with amazing immune systems, this is one of my first research studies ever. If we vaccinate them against the flu, they get half the antibodies if they're lonely and isolated. So this is affecting you every day. Even here, if you get coughed on or sneezed on, we have experimental studies that show that if you're isolated, you're 4 times more likely to get sick. So this is affecting every single day of your life, how your body is working, your health. We cannot ignore it. It's going to help with health behaviors. People who have social support are able to change their behaviors so much more successfully than people who try to do it alone.
And being the health nymph and imparting this to others provides purpose as well. One other comment, just in case you don't pivot back to this.
Yeah.
We've been talking about health and longevity, and it begs the question, why do you want these things? And I think it's agency in terms of longevity, more time to do what matters to me, right? If something doesn't matter to you, then more time to do it doesn't matter either. So purpose, I think, undergirds the pursuit of longevity. But I started asking my patients years ago, why do you come to see me? And inevitably, after some Socratic dialogue, we get to the fact that they want to be healthier. And then I'd ask them why, and it was a dead end. Because I think in our society, we tend to think of health as something that resides at the end of an admonishing finger. So I want to be healthy so I can tick that box and be a virtuous person. That's wrong. Other things being equal, healthy people have more fun. The investments you make in these things we're talking about make your life better. And yeah, there are some trade-offs, right? So maybe you don't eat croissants quite so often. But if the pleasure you get from food is conjoined to the pleasure you get from health, and that sum is maximized, you win, because your life is better. That's what this is for. Health is a currency you can spend on doing the things you want to do longer. That's why it matters. I think we overlooked, I don't think we sell health terribly well. Noom may sell health very well, but the rest of us lag behind and don't make the case that being healthy is fun.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring you guys in for questions. Oh, I see we already have a question here in the denim jacket. Let's get to the audience.
I'm Kurt Malkoff. I'm a PhD clinical psychologist. I've done this stuff for 50 years. My question is, are we using the right narrative? I think we have to sell health span, which you're doing, and you just alluded to, because you feel better when you're trying to wait. Boy, my mother lived 89 years old. That's pretty long. She had Alzheimer's for 11 years. So longevity is bullshit. I'm going to be 80 in a week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. If I walk out of here and drop over dead, I've been healthy for the last 80 years.
Yeah, good for
and
you.
I think that's what we have to focus on.
Yeah, I think this is, if not explicitly, implicitly about health span. So we've been talking about not just years in life, but life in years throughout.
The problem there is terminology.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about really is lifespan, increasing your lifespan, which nobody wants to do if you're chronically ill or sick.
Right, exactly.
Right. So Right.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
right that I think, and this is one of my greatest fears about longevity, is because what does it mean? Do people even know what it means? And if we don't do a good job of defining that, and we let the biohackers own that, and it's all about trying to live until you're 125 or beyond, then it's not going to be accessible to everybody. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do is actually really, how do you take this concept of longevity, first of all, make it understandable? It's about vitality, it's about health span. And how do you sort of democratize that so that people can really not only understand it better, but relate to it better and adopt it better? So yes, it's not the right narrative, and we're working on that.
Yes, another question here in the front.
Okay, she'll hold it for me. Thank you. Very nice talk. I'm Steve Deidelzweig, auctioneer, New Orleans. If I heard correctly, when you were mentioning about the different support that folks have and the GLP-1s, you shared that 3/4 of the folks after a couple of years are at the stage of just attrition. They go off the drug. And really what I was thinking about, as you mentioned that, what's foundational to that? Was it related to a medical adverse effect? Was it related to the economics? Was it psychologic? Was it other? And what can we do if we have folks on these agents to support that additional level of support? That's it.
Yeah, so the answer is that everything that you mentioned is a problem. So access to it, that might be financial. Side effects is a big one. Not really knowing, so sometimes titrating to the maximum dose is not something that everybody needs, but that's what most providers are trying to do, whereas we have a more titrate to the minimal effective dose approach. So there's a number of ways that we have to educate people, really personalize it. What is your reason for not continuing it? But that's the problem, is that people are falling through the cracks because they don't have a longitudinal support program. And that's basically what we're trying to create.
And I think to provide an entirely fair response, whether it's about biohacking and what we're talking about, or it's about GLP-1s and what we're talking about, it doesn't have to be a complete either or. We've made our case for the domains of lifestyle, but you can stay on GLP-1s for longer term, and one of the strategies that's been published is a transition to more episodic use at lower dose for maintenance. So there are actually studies that have randomized people to that versus cessation versus continuation at higher dose. And you get a large percentage of the longitudinal benefit of a higher dose by taking a very low dose intermittently. Some people may benefit from that. And similarly, if you're already doing the things we've talked about as most important and are interested in what more can I do, then you may want to start tinkering around with some of the biohacking that's out there. Just be careful with it. But these are not necessarily absolute either-or choices.
And don't lose the forest through the trees.
And don't lose the forest through the trees or the blue zones.
We've got a bright green T-shirt in the back.
Thank you all. The talk kicked off with a lot of joy and find the thing that's enjoyable, because that's what makes it sustainable. I have a question kind of on the other side of that, and the research showing doing the things that aren't enjoyable, doing the things that are hard, and how that stimulates and grows the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And once it becomes enjoyable and easy, that kind of shrinks back down. So what role does the truly eating the frog play in longevity?
I think it's a healthy balance. I think that you have to have both. So another concept that I'm really into is we've become a comfort society, and I don't think that's good for us. So I think it's a really important balance of and happiness. I think you're kind of hitting at one of the biggest points here, which is that you can't do hard things and also be happy. Actually, the pursuit of doing some of these things and being successful in them and the satisfaction that comes from them can bring joy and happiness as well. And so it's all about bringing balance.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I mean, this is a problem we have in education right now, is our students are so protected, they don't think stress is okay. Like, stress is trauma. All of my students think that they're traumatized. They are not traumatized. They're just experiencing normal day-to-day stress. Our bodies need to learn how to do that so that we can recover from it. Stress isn't bad if it's short. You have to learn how to get over it. And they're not learning it because they're yeah, exactly. They just don't think, and this is one of the things that actually happens with biohacking. Sometimes it's called recovery stress. eustress, I believe, where they see their heart rate going up, and they're like, oh no, I can't do anything. I have to keep my heart rate flat. That's not humanity. We want variability. And so teaching people that it's okay to approach these hard things as something good for you, just not letting yourself get too negative about them.
And I would differentiate between eustress and distress,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yeah.
distress may break something. Eustress will strengthen it, right? And there are all sorts of philosophical treatises on this, the concept of being anti-fragile. But in general, you just think about stressing muscles. If you overdo it and tear them, that's distress, and you have an injury, and then you have to recover from all that. But if you stress them well, that's eustress, and they become stronger and more resilient. The same is true, obviously, of the heart, and the same is clearly true of the mind and neuroplasticity. So I think you're making the case. So within that skill set is embracing the challenges. We did use that nomenclature along the way, right? Embrace the challenge of one of these lifestyle domains, and that will empower you to embrace the next, and you're climbing a spiral stair to your vitality at the top. You have to put in the effort. I think it's a misconception that this is, no matter what you read or what conference you go to, that any of this will just drop out of the sky into your lap. You have to actively engage in it.
Yeah. And it's hard to build relationships, right? It takes work. It's hard to become an exerciser, to eat well, but these things are really critical.
Effort.
And I mean, I think that's one of the reasons people would rather just shoot themselves with a peptide or take a new drug, is that it's less work than trying to do these things, but the work is valuable and it helps us grow.
Eustress is good.
Fantastic. I know there's a few lingering questions, but we do have a blinking red light flashing at us. So thank you so much for being here.
And it's stressing us out.
It's stressing us out.
Thank you, everybody.